Commissioner, District 3, Martin, Raxton, and Douglas County. Today, we're here to do another district dialogue, and I'm joined by none other than our E911 Director, Ms. Katrina Harley. Director Harley, thank you for joining us today, and we greatly appreciate giving us a few minutes of your time.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Raxton, for having me.
Absolutely. So, Director Harley, one of the things that we recently celebrated was a proclamation on National Telecommunications Week. So can you share a little bit on the importance of that and why that is so special?
Absolutely, absolutely. And thank you all, the Board of Commissioners, for proclaiming National Telecommunicator Week last week, which is typically the second week in April.
Okay.
It provides a time that we can thank those first responders, our 911 operators. Many times, you know, they are the heroes behind the headset, the voices of calm in chaos. And many times in the public, they are not the people that you see. Yes. And so when we have an opportunity just to say thank you for the work that they do, it's really important. And I'm very pleased that this county saw fit to proclaim last week as National Telecommunicators Week. The kind words that were offered went a long way with our staff in E911, so thank you.
Well, thank you, and it was an honor and pleasure to work alongside of yourself, your leadership, and your commitment, as well as with your team. One of the things that you always highlight is that your team is the first responders. Can you share a little bit more about what that really truly means to our community?
Yes, sure. So before calls, of course, are dispatched to our responders, to our law enforcement, and to fire EMS, they are going to come into the 911 center first as the first entry point for emergency services. You know, we all recognize that number 911. The first 911 call was made in 1968 in Haleyville, Alabama. And so 911 was one of those easily remembered numbers that people can call in emergencies. Okay. And so they're going to come into the 911 center first and then be dispatched out to the responders. And so not only are our 911 operators responsible for those 911 calls, but they're also responsible for ensuring the scene safety for our responding units. And so that's part of why 911 is the first responder.
Well, thank you for going on and giving us some additional context about that. One of the things that I find extremely fascinating is that not only are they the first, but they have to get it right. It has to be accurate because lives are definitely in the balance there. And I'm sure that could be very, very stressful for the team members that work there. But you've come and you've put in some great things, great initiatives to really help the team and just to really foster that team camaraderie. Can you share with us some of the things and some of the innovation that you have brought to the team into really helping them to maintain that stable, that calmness that they need to enduring and while they're on the phone, while others are in crisis?
Absolutely, absolutely. So before we go into that, I would just like to just provide a little bit of context and background.
Sure.
With 911, a lot of times folks don't understand that 911 is ranked one of the 8th most stressful positions, ahead of actually law enforcement and fire EMS. And it's because there's no end. So when we write a story, right, there's a beginning, there's the middle, and there's the end. With 911 operators, we get the beginning, but most times never the end. And so what that causes the mind to do is to kind of present itself behind a green screen in terms of just formulating what that end could possibly be.
Sure.
And with that, to that end, it becomes a very, very highly stressful position. The average burnout rate for a 911 operator is 2 years, and that's kind of been the industry standard for some time now. So over the years, it's become increasingly important to ensure that we take care of the people that take care of the people. Sure. Some of the things that we've implemented are, of course, you know, as with all of the other county employees, we have our employee assistance program that is available. But we've gone a step further. When there is a need to debrief from a high stress incident, we call in a therapist to speak with the shift and then actually offer those therapeutic services beyond that incident. We also, we've implemented a quiet room.
Okay.
And it is just a room, it is void of a television, it is void of just anything that is overstimulating, because they already work in a very highly stimulated environment.
Sure.
But it allows them to just take a moment and just reset so that they can be their best selves when they come out and answer those calls for the public, because that's very important.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. And I had the opportunity to come and tour the facility and was just very impressed with just the quality, not only from the physical facility, but again, some of the initiatives and some of the enhancements that you yourself have helped to oversee to really make it a true great work-life place and a great balance for our team members. And when you mentioned the 2-year burnout rate, that definitely resonates as
Yes.
We are really putting a lot more emphasis in community health, community engagement, and just making sure that our team members know that we're here to support them and that we truly treasure and value them and the great skills that they provide that we want to give back in a tangible manner, and you're doing that firsthand, so thank you for leading that charge there. I know recently we've had some discussions in regards to enhancements
Yes.
to the facilities, and I thought that along that line, maybe you could share with us some of the new initiatives, some of the new infrastructure, and then helping us to get to what we call that next gen. And what does that look like from an E911 perspective?
Absolutely, absolutely. So when 911 was first started, as I said, in 1968, it started with basic 911 service. And then we moved to the E in E911, which was enhanced.
Okay.
And so that gave us more information. It gave us what we call ANI-ALI, which is the automatic number identifier and automatic location identifier, and just some other things involved in the enhanced.
Okay.
So now we're moving into next generation 911, which is our next iteration of our 911 services, and we're very excited about it. As far as Douglas County is concerned, we already have elements of next generation 911.
Okay.
So for example, we have the ability to text to 911. Now, of course, I always have to make the disclaimer that if someone can call 911 and physically speak with an operator, that is always the first preference.
Sure.
But if someone were in an emergent situation and they could not do that, we have the ability for them to text to 911.
Okay.
We have a service in place where we can actually send out a link
Okay.
that allows folks to, once they accept that link, allows the operators to see the physical location.
Okay.
That has come in handy a great deal, particularly when folks are kind of in those emergent situations and they may have no idea where they are.
Okay.
So that's a part of next generation. Pretty much next generation allows us to be able to communicate how we communicate today.
Okay.
The 911 system was initially built out with the way that we used to communicate with the landline telephones, where you would dial the rotary phones, and I'm dating myself here, but that's the way 911 typically went. But now we're digital.
Okay.
And so whereas in the past, the majority of our calls were from landline phones, they are now from cellular phones.
Sure.
And so, you know, the texting, being able to see video,
Sure.
and all of those things is the next iteration of next generation 911.
All right.
But the largest component of that is actually changing the 911 infrastructure.
Okay.
And that's where our conversation is going now. And I appreciate the County Commission for indulging me and us with that conversation, because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. And when we come back after the break, I want to pick up a couple other areas in regards to the great services that's being provided by you and your team. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back shortly with Director Katrina Harley.
Being a cowboy, I don't know anything different from when I was 3 or 4 years old. I did tough things. I thought everybody needed to do tough things, and if you didn't, I didn't have time for it. I had a very successful career at a very young age, and life was fast. I was preparing physically. I wasn't doing anything mentally on the inside. And then I got hurt. I wanted to be better as a person, and I really dug into mental health. I start my day with 20-minute workouts. I live life 8 seconds at a time. Horses are so therapeutic. They know what you're feeling. When you're nervous, they're nervous. He won't say it back, but we're pals. I take a lot of responsibility in taking care of my kids, my family, and being there for them. You're gonna have tough days. Everybody does. Find a place to stop and just breathe. Love your mind.
Here's the deal. We gotta set ourselves up. Retirement is the long game. We can't play about our future or our finances. Let's put ourselves in the right position.
Welcome back to District Dialogue. And again, today I'm joined by Director Katrina Harley. So before our break, we were talking about the next gen.
Yes.
And one of the things that we were talking, and I would like to maybe dig a little deeper, is the infrastructure. What does that infrastructure look like? Where do you see us going maybe the next 3 to 5 years? And then how certainly we at the Board of Commissioners can really support that growth.
So the great thing about our Board of Commissioners here is that you all have pledged your support and commitment to Next Generation 911. So thank you for that. But in essence, Next Generation 911 allows us to replace that infrastructure. Of course, like I said, it's 57 years old, so
Okay.
it was built in line with landline telephones.
Okay.
And that copper infrastructure, but not the things that we deal with now.
Sure.
And so essentially, I would say the best way to describe Next Generation 911 in terms of EZInet is what it's called.
Okay.
And that's the Internet Services, the Emergency Services Internet Protocol for that kind of 911 infrastructure.
Okay.
The best way to describe it is the way that we currently operate 911 is through what we call legacy.
Okay.
And just say, for instance, if you're headed down a road and there's a boulder in the road, well, then you're stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what legacy 911 infrastructure looks like.
Okay.
With EZInet or Next Generation 911, you have several arteries. So if you have a boulder down this road, well, there's another road that you can go down.
Okay.
And then there's another road that you can go down. So that's very exciting for us because what it operates on is called a rule of 5-9. So that means 99.999% of the time, we should be up and running no matter what happens. And the best example of that is what recently happened in North Carolina with Hurricane Helene.
Okay.
When one center went down, others stood right up to
Sure.
be able to process those 911 calls. So to the public, it is a seamless process.
Sure.
And that's the way we should have folks feeling anytime there's an emergent situation, we should be able to handle their emergencies.
Okay, I understand. So one of the things as we close out that I would love to just get more insights, and I know that you're a resident here in Douglas County. I know that we're also, as you talk about redundancy, that we're also looking to have a backup place here in Douglas County, and that's going to be very, very significant. So looking forward to that coming online as well. And your experience in this arena has just been very, very impressive. So before we close out, anything else that you would like to share in regards to what we can look forward to and what the community can look forward to in regards to our public safety and specifically our emergency E911?
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. So one of the things that our community can look forward to is that we have a brand new backup E911 facility that will be stood up. No later, what we're looking at is Q1
Okay.
Of 2026. We're very excited about that because it allows us to have a redundant system.
Sure.
So that if something should happen at our primary site, then we can immediately go to our backup site again to ensure that emergency services is seamless in Douglas County.
Sure.
So we're very pleased with that,
Okay.
working very hard to get that center built. What we have in 911 is also called a hardened facility.
Okay.
So that center will be built to withstand tornadoes and certain things with regards to weather and all of that. So that's why you have a backup, because you always want to ensure that to the public, your emergency services stands
Sure.
no matter what happens.
Sure. Well, I certainly appreciate that, and just that statement of confidence, not only as a legislator, but also to share that with our residents and with our community, to know that in time of need, in time of crisis, those services are going to be there, they're going to be available, and they're going to have the access needed to support crisis and issues that we may face here in Douglas County.
Absolutely.
So Director Hartley, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for being a resident here in Douglas County. I know, again, we have skin in the game.
Yes.
And we certainly appreciate that. And to those that need any additional information, is there anything else that you would like to share?
Well, we do come out for community events.
Okay.
Because it's important for folks to understand 911.
Sure.
You'd be surprised that, no, people really don't understand 911. They just understand that when we pick up the phone and dial 911, that
Sure.
somebody's on the other end of the phone.
Sure.
But just understanding just the different nuances of 911, and just understanding just all of the moving parts that make up the emergency services in Douglas County. So we actually have a committee
Okay.
that goes out for public events where we go out and we educate the folks,
All right.
from the littles to our seniors. So,
All right.
and we're happy to do so.
So Director Harley, thank you for sharing that great insight and information with us today on District Dialogue. It was greatly appreciated, and we're looking forward to seeing you and your team in the community and educating our community on the great things that are provided by your services.
Thank you.
So after the break, we're going to switch and go and talk a little bit about code enforcement. That is a topic we get a lot of questions about, and we have someone here that's going to give us some great insights. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
I was a quarterback at Hardaway High School, college first round draft pick, on and off the field. We were taught to not show any signs of weakness. During the football season, I would stop eating, but I didn't know I was depressed. I thought that something was wrong with me. For 20 plus years was physical. We didn't have any education behind what mental health was. I started to learn it starts here first. If this is together, I'll be better as a father, as a man, and as a husband. Put the importance on your mental health. I'm not scared to talk about it anymore. The first tool is therapy. The second one is positive self-talk. And then journaling, putting your thoughts on paper. We have to redefine what being a strong man is and heal, love your mind.
Here's the deal. We gotta set ourselves up. Retirement is the long game. We can't play about our future or our finances. Let's put ourselves in the right position.
Welcome back to District Dialogue. I am your Commissioner, Martin Raxton from District 3. Today we're going to talk about an opportunity that we hear a lot about in our community, and that is code enforcement. So with us today is the Chief Code Enforcement Officer, and I'm joined by Russell Toussaint. So Russell, thank you for joining us today.
Yes, sir.
Greatly appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And one of the things I always like to do is get to know you a little bit better. So tell us a little bit about yourself, where are you from, and how did you get to Douglas County?
Well, not much of a myself talker, but I'm older than the average bear.
Okay.
So I'm originally from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, way up north. I migrated down here in 1996.
Okay.
And started with Douglas County in 2003, which puts me coming right up on 22 years here with the county.
All right.
On the same department.
Great.
It was a two-person department when we started, and it's now expanded through the gracious expenditures of the Board of Commissioners, it's expanded to a 9-person department now.
Great.
And other than that, that's just me.
So how did you get into code enforcement? That's a pretty unique and special field there. And just was curious, how did you migrate into that? Is that something that you always wanted to do, or how did that become a skill set that you developed over the years?
No, I actually had never heard of code enforcement until I heard about the job.
Okay.
So in part of my military career, I worked with computers, and then I did some security stuff.
Okay.
And then I had a friend of mine way back in 2002 and 3 when one of those positions were open.
Okay.
He was aware of it, put it on to me. He knew my background enough that said, you know, go apply and see what happens. And did the interview, and a couple of weeks later, it seemed to just, I don't want to say it was a natural slide, but it seemed to fit.
Okay.
It seemed to fit, and you know, 22 years later, God willing, here I still am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit about what does the Chief Code Enforcement Officer provide and the services you provide on a day-to-day basis here in Douglas County.
Okay. So as the supervisor, of course, I oversee the other 8 teammates that we have in code enforcement, and I do look at it as a team. I know it's a department official. I look at it as a team. We all operate equally, and we all operate efficiently with each other. So I oversee, you know, some of the day-to-day, you know, the time off, you know, the standard supervisory stuff that, you know, sometimes nods me off to sleep behind closed doors, but it's still good stuff. For me personally, now one of the things I do that the rest of the team does not do at this point is I issue sign permits for the county, all the businesses coming in, whether home-based business or on commercial properties. Any sign applications that come through, I run those and bounce those off of the sign ordinance, make sure they're in compliance, issue permits. If they're not in compliance with what needs to happen, we give them some feedback on how to tweak their application to get approval and get advertisement. But we have, myself included, we have 8 field officers.
Okay.
And we go, and I still go out into the field.
Okay.
You know, just because I'm a supervisor, I can sit for a couple hours, and then I have to get out and get moving with the rest of the team. And it helps me, you know, keep a knowledge of the surrounding area, the topography, and see what's new and see what may need to be addressed that maybe some of the other newer officers might not see.
Sure.
Just because of my length of time, I may say, oh, let's go ahead and tackle on this. But we all go out and you know, we work on complaints primarily that come into our department secretary. She takes those complaints and disperses them based on zone coverages that we have for the officers.
Sure.
And we try to have a 48-hour response time. It can be sooner, but no greater than 48 hours. And then we issue citations for any violations we see out there based on the Unified Development Code, the Code of Ordinances, and or the International Property Maintenance Code. Those are our 3 primary resource books.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
So you talk about the zones. Can you share a little bit about how these zones are created and how they're managed? And is there a particular code enforcement officer assigned to each zone? And then how does the community get to understand who is assigned to a particular zone that they live in?
Sure, yeah, I can explain that. So we have 16 zones in the county, and I guess the easiest way to, you know, wrap mind around it from a layman's point of view, we'll just say we have 4 zones in each of the primary quadrants. So the northeast quadrant is going to have 4 zones covered by 1 officer. The southeast quadrant will also have 4, and then the southwest and northwest corners will also have 4 separate zones each.
Okay.
Now we do have more officers than we do. We have more officers than just 4 different zones.
Sure.
So there are some of those zones that are kind of split between 2 different officers.
Okay.
But we have an internal. We know by the property address and some of the other land lot information. We know whose zone it's going to be in.
Okay.
And when we get the call in from our department secretary, she issues that. She has that knowledge, and she'll disperse it to whomever needs to get it.
Okay.
So that's the primary way to do it. We can be called directly to our individual phones. It's easier to call our department secretary because she keeps track of who's calling in, when they called in, just in case there's any issues with someone calling and say, well, I called you last week, and come to find out it was actually last month, and they just didn't follow up. So it's always easier to go directly through our secretary.
Okay.
But we also have the citizen portal, I think that was established about a year ago online. You can also submit complaints that way. The same way to disperse the complaints.
Okay.
It goes the same way. We just look at it online, and Fran Goss, our department secretary, she takes that and just disseminates it as she needs to.
Okay.
So we have a bunch of different methods to get into us, but they're all going to eventually funnel to our department intake.
Okay. So when you're talking about the intake and the complaints that are being provided, what is the primary method that you have found that our citizens communicates with the code enforcement department?
As far as their calling concerns, 90% of our cases, if not more, are going to be litter oriented.
Okay.
And our litter ordinance is pretty, it's got some general stuff to it. It's broad, but it also has some very specifics, which is why it's our primary call-in, because it can be very specific as far as junk cars, junk vehicle parts from a prohibited auto mechanic shop on a residential property. So it has specifics listed out, but it also says other descriptions in nature. So it gives us discretion when we go out there. People may call in and say, well, if there's 1,000 bags of trash on a property, and we get out there and there's a Burger King cup. So that's where our discretion comes into play. Of do we just going to knock on the door and just talk with someone and say, let's get it picked up, or are we going to actually write a citation for something so minor? Not that the complaint is trivial, but sometimes it's best to just knock on the door, have a conversation, and be gone in 5 minutes. And then let them get on with their day, and we can move on to others. So, but litter is going to be our primary concern more often than not.
Okay. So one of the things that you know about myself is that I am really big on the adoptive spot.
Yes, sir.
And keeping District 3 very, very clean. So with that said, one of the things that I really promote is for our residents, and we are hearing this, that when garbage is picked up, if it's not placed in a container and in a plastic bag and sealed, that as the garbage trucks are going on major thoroughfares and even in the communities, that garbage can come out and spill out, and debris gets on some of our roads.
Correct.
So is there anything, or are you seeing that, or is there anything else that we can really promote to our residents to help to keep down the litter?
Well, I mean, I guess from an educational point of view, I mean, that's something we can definitely look at and start talking with the citizens ahead of time so that we don't have to go out and write tickets on that. Don't really have a process in place, but it is something that we are working on anyway. As far as the stuff flying out of the trucks up and down the roadway, that's going to lean more toward the Department of Transportation's road crew. But we are out and about a lot more often than they are for those specific kind of things. So what we do is, we will call them, right from the field. If we see a half-mile stretch in your area of, on Chapel Hill Road that's just, just looks terrible, we'll pull over, make that phone call and say, hey, we're in between these two addresses, there's a lot of stuff. We'll investigate some of that stuff that's in the side of the road, and if there's a way for us to, track down who may have put it in there, we'll also reach out to them directly and deal with that accordingly after a conversation with them. It can go a couple different ways, and we try to keep it open to dialogue, but sometimes you just have to write that ticket.
All right. Well, we certainly appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
So when we come back after break, I want to talk a little bit about animal control as well as absentee landlords.
Okay.
So when we come back at the break, we'll come back with Russell and get into that a little bit further. See you after the break.
Here's the deal. We gotta set ourselves up. Retirement is the long game. We can't play about our future or our finances. Let's put ourselves in the right position.
Being a cowboy, I don't know anything different from when I was 3 or 4 years old. I did tough things. I thought everybody needed to do tough things, and if you didn't, I didn't have time for it. I had a very successful career at a very young age, and life was fast. I was preparing physically. I wasn't doing anything mentally on the inside. And then I got hurt. I wanted to be better as a person. And I really dug into mental health. I start my day with 20-minute workouts. I live life 8 seconds at a time. Horses are so therapeutic. They know what you're feeling. When you're nervous, they're nervous. You won't say it back, but we're pals. I take a lot of responsibility in taking care of my kids, my family, and being there for them. You're gonna have tough days. Everybody does. Find a place to stop and just breathe. Love your mind.
Hi, this is Commissioner Martin Raxton, District 3, and today we're talking about code enforcement. So I'm joined by our Chief Code Enforcement Officer, Russell Toussaint, and Russell, we greatly appreciate the insights that you shared with us.
Yes, sir.
So one of the things I want to drill a little deeper in is animal complaints, and we're seeing an increase in dogs that are roaming, and not just in rural areas, but also in heavily residential areas. And this is certainly an impact not only to adults, but certainly to children.
Correct.
So want to maybe speak a little bit more in detail about what can we do, how can we partner, how can the community partner with our code enforcement office to really help to drive that down?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So we do get a lot of complaints. It seems we do have some parts of our Unified Development Code that will address animals on property to a certain extent, as far as if you have roosters, chickens, goats, you have to have a certain acreage, you have to be zoned a specific type of zoning. Those are the kind of things that we can get involved in. Now, of course, the citizens aren't generally going to be aware of that, so they'll call in for other stuff, like you said, loose dogs running up and down the roadway. When we get those kind of things that are handled by animal control rather than code enforcement, of course, we direct the citizen to contact them directly. And the main number we give out, the 770-942-5961, that goes directly to animal control.
Okay.
But we have seen an influx coming into our department on that. And although we don't go run down the loose dogs or cows or horses or emus or all that stuff, we have, the last 6 months especially, we have seen an influx in that. We have started working even closer with animal control and them with us. As far as we'll call them if we're out at a property for a litter violation, but we see some dogs that may be in distress, illegally tethered to a tree or whatever. We'll contact them while we're on site.
Okay.
If they ask us to wait, of course we will. If they have them en route, then we'll leave and let them handle it. They're an extremely capable department. It's run fantastically over there, and they're very responsive. All the officers are fantastic. The director's great. It's a great department to work with. And if they're out on an animal call and they see some other issues that would relate to us, so there's quite a bit of overlap, and it's a good communication tool. We do that with all the departments.
Okay.
It seems like that with animal control has picked up a lot more in the last half a year or so. So it's great.
Okay, well that's great to know. And even in District 3, there are some overlaps as well from the city of Douglasville and Douglas County.
Yes.
So how does the two communities, two agencies and governmental bodies, how do you really work and closely collaborate to ensure that the needs of the communities are addressed?
Sure, and we do get a lot of calls that eventually end up being in the city once we look up the addresses. And then so the easiest thing is while we're on the phone with that citizen or that business calling in is direct them over to the main number for City Hall, have them ask for code compliance, and go from there. No different than if they call the city and they have to call us. But I do have quite a few direct contacts with the city code compliance, and sometimes it's equally easy to just pick up the phone and call this person and say, hey, I got a call on this property. They're going to be calling you soon, but here's your heads up. A couple hours of a preemptive strike sometimes does make all the difference with that. So we do have a good rapport with the city. From a jurisdictional point of view, our jurisdiction stops at the city limits, other than serving summonses to bring people into court.
Okay.
But like I said, we have such a good rapport with the city. There's never been an issue with us with them or them with us.
Okay, well that's good to know. And I know it can be very confusing to our residents not knowing which entity to contact. So that's good to see that you have that type of relationship.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
So as we wrap up, is there anything else that you would like to share, or are there anything that's coming up from a code enforcement perspective that you would like to give to our community?
The biggest thing, right, honestly, for the last year, and we're going to continue this for the next few years, we are being proactive in subdivisions throughout the county, not just in any particular district. You and I've kind of talked with you about some of the stuff we're doing in some subdivisions in your area, just as a heads up. That inevitably will bring citizen call-ins to you, so we try to grease those wheels a little bit for you. But it actually has been very, very effective. Some people may be afraid to call in on their next door neighbor or the guy down the road or the girl down the road. And us being in there without them having to call, sometimes it saves a little bit of a trouble. So that's really, we have a bunch of other projects going on, but that's the biggest thing from a county-wide perspective, I think, is going to be the biggest help to the residential citizens throughout. everywhere, including your district.
All right. Well, Russell, we greatly appreciate you giving us a few minutes
Yes,
of
sir.
your time today. We greatly appreciate you, our listeners and our viewers here in Douglas County, spending a little time to learn some great things and what we're doing here for your government in beautiful Douglas County. So thank you for joining this segment of District Dialogue, District 3. I am Martin Raxton, your commissioner, and we'll see you next time. Have a great day.